The first thing that catches the eye with the DeLorean is, of course, the stainless steel body. The brushed stainless steel is otherwise completely untreated. There's no painting or anything else required. And the overall design of the car comes from Italy, from Giugiaro Ital Design, who at the time of the end of the 70s created the entire design. The next highlight is, of course, the DeLorean wing doors. The door wing is built relatively large and heavy because we obviously have a lot of components in there. We have the central locking, electric windows. Otherwise, if we look further, we have here at the back the engine from Renault, and indeed this is a V6 engine called the PRV V6, which was designed and constructed by Peugeot, Renault and Volvo. But this version is only just DeLorean. There is this variation in any other vehicle from any other manufacturer. The vehicle has relatively extensive comfort features for that time. The car had air conditioning, and as I said, it had a central locking, electric windows, it had leather seats, leather steering wheel. So in this respect, the whole thing was very well equipped, and what we still notice at the back are the big bumpers that come all the way from Germany, and the bumpers were produced at Phoenix and Hamburg. And also the top two panels are from German production. They come from Ferrocell company from Augsburg. And at the end of the 70s and early 80s, it was not typical that you used an all-over bumper as an element of the body. The DeLorean here has been very, very well done. And we have the original wheels. The wheel design is also very concise and very noticeable for the time, typical of the DeLorean. And what we see here, the little side window, was originally intended for the first construction of a sliding window. Only the designers didn't like it, so this was changed to the small, electrically retractable side window, and thus we have an issue: large glass areas, large interior space heating. Without air conditioning in the summer, it would be really hot in this car. Yeah, for the body, there are still a few features. Here we have a DeLorean from the first series. In the first series, the hood is pressed into the grooves, and also still has the fuel filler flap. The tank lid, in this case, can only be opened electronically. The DMC-12 was originally designed as a mid-engine sports car, but by the installation of large, heavy Renault V6 engine, the rear of the car had to be converted into a pure rear-engine vehicle. The DeLorean has its own handling through the rear-mounted engine, but it behaves itself on dry roads. Even in extremely brisk curves, it is fun in the car to chase it across country roads. The V6 delivers 132 horsepower for a top speed of 200 kilometers an hour. Otherwise, the DeLorean runs just like any other car. It's comparatively unspectacular because of the large-scale production components that are installed here. Chassis is okay. This is perfectly adequate for the performance. One comes through the curves well. Apart from the rear engine, the chassis is characterized by the independent suspension, system wishbones and coil springs front and rear. Driving with the DeLorean is no more complicated than with any other car. There are, of course, some physics to be observed on wet roads that can be critical on the rear axle. Back from the past. The sports car with probably the craziest history of all time, the DeLorean DMC-12. The DeLorean, famous from the movie series Back to the Future, ex-GM Vice President John DeLorean had long dreamed of having an own sports car. He went to Ireland because he got £100 million of support from the government to build his company. Even Sammy Davis Jr. and Johnny Carson invested. Because of the automotive crisis in 1980, the company was on the verge of collapse. DeLorean tried to finance production with drug money to continue. After a production of 9,000 cars, it was finally closed in 1982. Matching the gold credit card, American Express galvanized two DeLoreans with 24-karat gold in 1981. In total today, there are 3 golden DeLoreans. Yeah, the gold one, that was an idea of DeLorean and American Express. An edition of 100 was targeted, but that wasn't feasible. So out of this action, there were effectively 2 of these vehicles produced. And the 3rd vehicle was the last vehicle ever to run off the production line. That was built for the bankruptcy administrator who liquidated DeLorean at the end of '82, who then took it with him. Near Munich in Germany, Wolfgang Hunk has his DeLorean workshop. This morning he has to solve a technical problem on a customer's vehicle with his mechanic, Jan der Hacker. Yeah, well, the problem is it's almost classical. It's the early cold start problems.
Okay.
He's had it for a few days, and purely from experience, it's the warm-up regulator. But I want to be sure, and that's why we first check the pressures before we install a new part, if that's it.
We know that, yes.
I have the nominal values, the usual stuff. Yeah, we know, correct. Depending on the temperature, we can see, yes. What do we have now on the surface? We look after the engine temperature. And yeah, in principle, it's room temperature, which is basically cold. And well, can you start the engine, please? The problem is that the car is difficult to start cold in the morning. That means you have to try for a long time, and it'll eventually come, and then doesn't take the gas properly, and you have to sort of tickle it a lot, and it takes about half a minute to a minute, and then you can drive sensibly with the car. And that's what it's had for a few days. It's just annoying, especially when it's colder. The whole thing doesn't work anymore. So Jan, start it up, please. Okay, it could be good, but it's pretty clear. As we assumed, there are values out of tolerance here. It's already clearly has practically too high control values when cold, significantly above control pressure. So we'll now replace the warm-up regulator, and then we'll see how it behaves then. Got it. The vehicles are now 30 years old, and after this amount of time, a warm-up regulator like this can break down exactly. Since Porsche rejected a development order for the DeLorean at the time, the car was largely based on the chassis of the Lotus Esprit, and at the back a relatively simple 6-cylinder production engine from Peugeot, Renault and Volvo was used. In short, PRV. If we do not replace the warm-up regulator, the vehicle has no power when cold. It also doesn't start properly. This is not a big issue with the outside temperatures as they are now, but in the autumn and winter, when it gets really cold, it becomes an annoyance, and then it will no longer run sometimes. Also, it uses an extremely high amount of fuel in the warm-up phase, and one runs way too rich. Then as a consequence, we have sooty spark plugs, etc., and all the things that you don't need. So, the warm-up regulator?
No, as always.
And you can't find out anything with it, but we simply have to replace it with a new part. So the warm-up regulator does exactly what the name says. It controls the warm-up. This is in the basics to compare with a choke handle, as we know it previously from old carburetor cars. That is, it is adjusted to the mixture, has a function of engine temperature, and meets the requirements accordingly. We have here input and output from the fuel pressure, and we have an electrical connection for preheating, and we have in this case also the whole vacuum assisted. As I said, basically a choke from our modern fuel injection system. Wolfgang builds the new warm-up regulator in a few minutes. He is the DeLorean specialist in Europe. His customers often travel over 1,000 miles to him if they have a problem with their DeLorean. Yeah, we have here a Bosch injection system, and the supply of spare parts is almost straightforward. Actually, every part is still available in new purchase or in swap. Up to the left front wing, for after the closure of the factory, the tools for it were scrapped and partly sunk at sea. So, yeah, now all there is, would you start again, please? So Jan, now look here, now we are halfway between 1.5 and 2. Now we have a few more degrees, but now we are all just over 2 bars. That is exactly where we want to be. This is the area, wonderful.
Was our old friend.
It now runs a lot quieter when it's cold. I think that was the cause of our problem. The warm-up regulator is a typical weakness of the K-Jetronic fuel injection. The vehicle is basically very simply built, and due to the large-scale series production technology that has been installed. We've got the engine from Renault and the gearbox from Renault. We have the injection from Bosch. It's comparatively easily set up. After the warm-up regulator is replaced, Wolfgang still wants to do a test drive to verify that everything works properly. The DMC-12 was originally designed as a mid-engine sports car, but by the installation of large, heavy Renault V6 engine, the rear of the car had to be converted into a pure rear-engine vehicle. The DeLorean has its own handling through the rear-mounted engine, but it behaves itself on dry roads. Even in extremely brisk curves, it is fun in the car to chase it across country roads. The V6 delivers 132 horsepower for a top speed of 200 kilometers an hour. Otherwise, the DeLorean runs just like any other car. It's comparatively unspectacular because of the large-scale production components that are installed here. Chassis is okay. This is perfectly adequate for the performance. One comes through the curves well. Apart from the rear engine, the chassis is characterized by the independent suspension, system wishbones and coil springs front and rear. Driving with the DeLorean is no more complicated than with any other car. There are, of course, some physics to be observed on wet roads that can be critical on the rear axle. The sound of speed at the Salzburg Ring, one of the most popular classic car racing events in Austria. Despite heavy rain at the start, everything that has made a name for itself on the scene is there. For the first time ever, today a DeLorean is driving at the racetrack. DeLorean specialist Wolfgang Hunk, who built the racing Delo, gives his driver a couple of tips shortly before the first run. Then the DeLorean goes out onto the track. The maiden voyage on the Salzburg Ring is also a journey into the unknown. Will the redesigned car endure the race pace? Wolfgang is cheering along in the stands. Yeah, our goal here today at the Salzburg Ring is to really move the vehicle once across the track, or to move under full load, and to move even in comparison, in direct comparison with similar race cars, and see if it all works well, just as we have imagined. Up until now, we've not had the opportunity to drive along straight, and the car is really driving for the first time in third, fourth, fifth speed. On our test track, we only have the opportunity to go in first and second gear, and that's certainly very exciting for us. While many participants were disappointed with the bad weather, the weak engine performance of the DeLorean motor is not so noticeable in the rain, so Martin can, in the truest sense of the word, swim in the field well with the Delo. The DeLorean survived the first stint well. Time to take stock. And how is it?
It was really cool, goes really well. It is set up well. I thought that braking on wet surfaces, corners in the wet, would be like dancing on eggshells.
Okay, not at all?
Nope.
Suspension, because it's a bit softer, it's extremely good for us here.
With these weather conditions, it is really good for us. If it was dry, then it would be completely different.
That would be different for sure. But in this weather?
In this weather, we have the right ones. We have semi-slicks on it. The profile really helps us. The only thing I noticed is that we do not have a speedometer. But who needs?
No, we don't have a speedometer, but it's overrated anyway. No, we don't have a speedometer. We have a tachometer.
It was much better than I thought. I thought it would be bad for braking with the thing because the weight distribution is unfavorable. I thought it would be bad for the NOx tank carrier. I thought it was bad. I know. Not at all. This thing is really great. Yes, we are not only swimming along somehow, but we are really doing well. That's actually what makes the most fun. We always thought that we would compete here for the Golden Lemon, but it's not like that. It's great fun. That thing is really cool.
Despite all the hype for the next run, Wolfgang has yet to make a routine check to avoid possible technical defects. Yeah, now let's see if everything is sealed, if everything is tight, if anything leaks, oil, water, or fuel, but it looks very good. You can't smell anything. You can smell antifreeze very quickly, and you can smell fuel anyway. Now I'm just going to still check the oil level. I'm not worried now. The driver was basically satisfied with the car. I could see his grin. Yeah, perfect. It's exactly where he is down, just before maximum. Clean. Well, I'm satisfied. A few minutes later, the DeLorean is back on track. The rain has become heavier and driver Martin now has the highest concentration because the driving behavior of Dilo in the rain is just not easy. Yeah, the DeLorean can basically be driven to the limit because the engine sits at the back and of course the whole brunt of the weight lies on the rear axle. It's been tricky in the rain to move the box around the corners. We've experienced this outdoors on the roads when it's critical, when it rains. We're now very surprised here, but this is probably due to the suspension tuning and well-selected tires, and with these tires we move very well around the corners. What anyone hardly expected, the DeLorean makes a brilliant impression on its racing debut. The car stops without any technical problems and Martin always achieves faster lap times. At the end, he even overtakes much more powerful cars. For me, the expectations are met. We were traveling for 1 hour in total at full throttle with the car. The vehicle has maintained great, very stable, and the driver is happy. I'm satisfied. Nothing is leaking, but it does not drip, nothing is missing. It's a dream, and I'm really happy with today. The weather, you can say what you will, it's an Irish car, it's Irish weather. The suspension, the tires fit the weather, it really went well, really good. For now, I'm very happy.
Yes, I'm keen to take the car for a few more events. There's certainly a lot to do on the car yet, especially when the track is dry, but that is the real fun part.
The great dream of Wolfgang and Martin is to start with a DeLorean in the classic car race in the 24-hour race at Nürburgring sometime in the future.